Asterisk, it was supposed to be just another celebrity panel. A typical Hollywood roundtable where actors shared funny behind-the-scenes stories, traded light-hearted jabs, and sipped coffee under blinding studio lights. But what happened that day? Nobody expected. The cameras were rolling. The audience clapped as the guests entered one by one. Jonathan Roumie, the actor known for portraying Jesus in The Chosen, walked in with his usual quiet humility. A slight nod, a soft smile, a presence that was somehow both powerful and gentle. Then came Keanu Reeves, wearing a dark suit, hair a little messy, hands in his pockets. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a movie, calm, cool, but carrying something. As they all settled in, the conversation was light. Funny stories, red carpet anecdotes, a few awkward laughs. But then something shifted. The host, trying to stir things up, turned to Keanu. "So, Keanu," they asked, half grinning, "you've played assassins, prophets, even messiahs. Ever think about playing Jesus?" The room laughed. Except Keanu didn't. He looked down for a moment, then up. "I wouldn't," he said softly, "not because I wouldn't want to, but because I'm not worthy." The laughter stopped. The host raised an eyebrow, amused. "Not worthy?" Keanu turned slightly toward Jonathan, and what he said next silenced the entire room. "I've watched The Chosen," Keanu said. "Not just watched it, felt it. And I realized something. That portrayal of Jesus, it didn't feel like acting. It felt like truth. And it made me think about everything I thought I knew." Jonathan's face shifted, stunned, not expecting that. No one was. "I grew up with questions," Keanu continued. "About God, about pain, about why we lose people, why the world is so cruel sometimes. But something about that show, about your performance." He looked at Jonathan. "It broke something open in me." The audience was completely still. Not a cough, not a shuffle, just silence. Keanu leaned forward. "I started reading again. The Gospels. Alone, at night. I wanted to understand him. Not the version sold in movies, but the man who wept. The man who forgave. The man who died for people who hated him." Jonathan's eyes were wide, moist. "I'm not a preacher," Keanu said. "I'm just a guy who's made a lot of mistakes. But something about Jesus. It's not just a story. He's not just a character." Then Keanu paused, looked down, took a breath. "There was a night," he said recently, "I was alone, and I prayed. For the first time in years. Really prayed." He looked up, and I felt, heard. The audience was breathless. Jonathan Roumie's lip trembled, and then, as if unable to hold it back, he whispered, "Thank you." Keanu gave a small nod. What started as a scripted show had become a sacred moment, and it was only the beginning. The tension in the studio was quiet, but deep. Something sacred had happened, and no one quite knew how to move forward. But Keanu did. After a moment, he leaned back slightly and looked toward the audience, not with arrogance, but with raw honesty. "I lost my best friend when I was 23, he said, voice low. "I lost my daughter before she was born. Then I lost the woman I loved in a car crash. All of that happened before I turned 35. A few gasps. The room leaned in. "I didn't grow up religious," he continued. "Not in the real sense. I didn't go to church. I didn't pray before meals. But I did think about life and death. A lot." His eyes glanced briefly toward the studio lights, unfazed by their heat. "I always thought pain was just something you carry alone, that maybe if you were strong enough, it wouldn't destroy you." He looked toward Jonathan. "But that's not what Jesus taught, is it?" Jonathan slowly shook his head. "No, it's not." Keanu nodded. "Jesus didn't run from pain. He walked into it. He embraced it. He forgave while bleeding. That kind of love is terrifying and beautiful." There was a pause. One of the other guests, a younger actress, visibly moved, whispered, "I didn't know you believed in all this." Keanu smiled faintly. "I didn't either, not really. But then I started seeing signs." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn item. A cross. Simple, wooden, clearly old. "This was given to me by a woman I met at a bookstore in Toronto," he said. "I was filming late, walking past her, and she just handed it to me. No words, just smiled. I didn't even know her name." He turned it gently in his hand. "For years, I kept it in a drawer. Then one night, I couldn't sleep. I took it out, held it, and prayed." He looked directly at Jonathan. "I didn't ask for fame, or healing, or even peace. I just said, Jesus, if you're real, show me. The studio was dead silent. And he did, Keanu said. A soft sniffle broke the quiet. It was Jonathan. He wiped his face. Man, he whispered, voice cracking. I don't have words. Keanu smiled gently. You don't need them. The host, clearly moved, but trying to keep the show moving, leaned forward. So what now? They asked. Are you like a Christian now? Keanu looked down for a beat, then back up. I'm a man still learning, he said. But I believe now. I believe he's real. And I believe he loves us. All of us. Even the broken. A long pause. I know because I'm one of them. Jonathan took a shaky breath. Keanu, you don't know how many people you just reached by saying that. Keanu gave him a soft look. Maybe I needed to say it out loud. Maybe that's why I'm here. And in that moment, the glitz, the makeup, the cameras, none of it mattered. There was no script, just two men, broken and human, sitting in front of a world, and pointing upward to someone far greater, and the world watching began to feel it too. The camera didn't cut away, not this time. For once, the producers didn't shout for a commercial break, because no one dared to move. Something rare was unfolding on live television. Not scandal, not satire, but sincerity, reverence, and it was coming from the most unexpected source. Keanu leaned in slightly, as if afraid to say the next words, but he said them anyway. I used to think love was something you gave when things were good, when people deserved it, when it made sense. He looked down at the small wooden cross still in his hand. But Jesus, he gave it when people hated him. He bled for them. For us, even when we cursed him. A soft breath escaped Jonathan's lips. His voice came trembling. That's grace. Keanu nodded slowly. And I don't understand it all, he admitted. But I know what it felt like the night I asked him to show me he was real. He paused. There was this warmth, not from outside, but inside, like something broke open in me. He touched his chest with his fingers. I felt forgiven, loved, completely. For the first time, a crew member could be seen wiping his eyes in the background. Another whispered, "Is this really happening?" The host, silent now, let Keanu speak freely, and he did. I started reading the Gospels, quietly, in trailers, between scenes. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. He smiled. It wasn't a story to me anymore. It was a person. And he was calling me. Jonathan whispered, "He still is." Keanu looked over. Their eyes met. And in that gaze was an unspoken understanding. That faith wasn't something you wore like a jacket on Sundays. It was a fire. And Keanu was burning. Then something happened. From the studio audience, a voice broke out. Raw male. Uncertain. Keanu, all eyes turned. A man trembling stood up slowly. My son just died last year, he said. He was 12. I haven't been able to breathe since. Keanu stared at him still. Listening. The man swallowed. I was watching this for a laugh. But I don't feel like laughing now. The studio was frozen. Even the cameras stood still. The man's voice cracked. Do you really believe Jesus sees that pain? Keanu looked at him straight. No blinking. No flinching. I do, he said. I believe he sees all of it. And I believe he weeps with you. Just like he wept at Lazarus' tomb. Silence. The man collapsed back into his seat, hands covering his face. Jonathan looked around. This is why we're here. The host finally spoke. I've hosted hundreds of shows. Politicians, celebs. I've never seen something like this happen on my stage. Keanu smiled faintly. That's because this isn't your stage tonight. The crowd murmured softly. No, Jonathan said. It belongs to him. There was no applause. Not yet. Just reverence. Like the space had turned sacred, and across the world wherever people were watching, something stirred. In living rooms, in bedrooms, in people's hearts. Not because the celebrity spoke, but because truth had finally broken through the screen. A soft, solemn quiet filled the studio. No laughter, no music, just stillness. And in that stillness, hearts were being rearranged. The host leaned back, visibly shaken. I never expected this. Keanu looked down at his hands. Then, softly, neither did I. Jonathan Roumie, still emotional, finally gathered himself. You know, he said gently, Jesus said that if we're silent, even the rocks will cry out. But tonight, you spoke. The audience, still in awe, began to softly clap. Not out of entertainment, out of gratitude. A woman in the front row stood, tears streaming down her cheeks. My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 4 years. But when you talked about forgiveness, I felt something shift inside me. I'm going to call her tonight. Keanu smiled, gently. That's not me. That's Jesus. Jonathan looked around the room at the crew, the audience, the host, at the millions watching from screens around the world. He's real, and he's still in the business of healing hearts. The host clearly moved, leaned forward. So what now, Keanu? You're not a preacher. You're a movie star. Keanu chuckled lightly, voice low. I'm not trying to be anything. I'm tired of pretending like none of this matters. Like we're just floating through space, chasing applause. There's more. Jonathan added. There's purpose. Redemption. The host, emotional now, looked into the camera. To anyone watching at home, maybe this wasn't the episode you expected, but maybe it's the one you needed. He paused, took a breath. And if you're hurting, doubting, lost, you're not alone. Behind him, a quiet piano melody began to play. Not scripted, just fitting. Keanu turned to Jonathan one last time. Thank you, he said, for being bold with your faith. It gave me courage to stop hiding mine. Jonathan's eyes welled again. You didn't just speak, Keanu. You lit a fire. The lights slowly dimmed as the credits prepared to roll. The camera held for one final shot. Keanu Reeves and Jonathan Roumie, two unlikely messengers, sitting side by side, not as actors, not as celebrities, but as brothers in Christ. And in homes across the world, people didn't turn off their screens. They stayed. They prayed. They wept, because for the first time in a long time, hope felt real again.